Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial, which will be focused on social authentication with Django-AllAuth. Alright, now the Django-AllAuth package is going to allow us to log into our Django application with both local and social-based authentication. So local-based being the default Django authentication mechanism, and of course, social authentication is going to be based on more social accounts. So you'll be able to go ahead and log in to your account with a supported provider. So this will include, for example, Amazon, GitHub, Google, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. So there'll be a lot of supported providers that you can make use of. So I'm going to be teaching you how you can implement Django-AllAuth by making use of the GitHub support provider. Now, of course, I will share the documentation and I'm constantly going to refer to it in this video tutorial, so you can have a look there and make use of whichever supported provider you prefer. And like I said, all the links will be included, like always, in every video, so you can go ahead and browse through. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a simple Django project. We're also then going to create and configure a basic app, set up our basic URLs and views. So we're just going to start from scratch here. That being said, you're more than welcome to skip ahead to the relevant chapter of this video. So I will include chapters, so you could skip to the section where you want to start from. All right. But for those of you that want to literally start from scratch with me, you're more than welcome, and let's get started. Alright, so I'm just on my desktop, and all I'm going to do is go ahead and create a base directory here on my desktop. And I'm going to call it, for example, dev, okay, or development, either one's fine. And then I'm going to open up my CMD. So you can just search for your CMD, okay, and you can open that up. So I already have mine open here. And I want to cd into dev. So first I need to go to my desktop. There's dev, and I'm going to say cd dev, clear that up. And here we are. Perfect. Now, what you need to do is you need to ensure that you have the virtual env package installed globally on your system. Now, this is one of the few packages that you should have globally installed on your system. So generally speaking, you don't want to have these packages, any packages on your system in terms of Django. So make sure you go ahead and focus on installing packages locally. But in this instance, it's more than fine. So you want to say pip install, and you want to say virtual env. Okay, so you want to install the virtual env package. So this will allow us to go ahead and actually create virtual environments. Perfect. Now what you want to do while you're in your dev environment here, you want to go ahead and just create your virtual environment. So what I'm going to do is create it. So I'm going to say virtual env, venv. And I'm going to create my virtual environment in this folder here. Now there are many ways to do it. This is just my preference, so you can go ahead and do it any way that you like. So just go ahead and create your virtual environment. Okay, and once it's been created for me, oh, it's already done. There we go. Perfect. And let's say clear. So CLS is for clear in the command prompt. You can now say venv /scripts /activate. And there we go. So we can see we're in our virtual environment. And we can type pip list just to see the packages. So these should be the default packages of pip within your virtual environment. So let's double check. Okay, there we go. So pip setup wheels wheel. Okay, that's the default. Perfect. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and install Django within our virtual environment. So I'm going to say pip install Django. So go ahead and install Django. So it shouldn't take too long. So I'm going to pause the video, and once it's been installed, we can move on to the next set of steps. So let's just wait for that. Perfect. So we can see that Django was installed successfully. So to confirm this, let's just say CLS to clear this, and now say pip list to confirm. So let's double check it's in the virtual environment. There it is, Django 4.1.7. All right, so make sure you've installed Django. Perfect. Now I just want to take a look at our directory so far. So if we open up dev, okay, we can see we have our virtual environment here, and next to it will be our Django project. Okay, so I like to keep the virtual environment separate. Okay, but like I said, you guys will have your own preference. So what we can do now is in dev, we can go ahead and create our Django project. Since we now have our virtual environment active where Django sits, it will be easier to create the project itself. So we can say Django-admin, and we can say start project. And give your project a name. I'm going to call mine Elevate. Okay, so go ahead and start your project. There we go. Now, if you want to validate this, head on to Dev now, and we can see our Django project there. Perfect. So what you can do now is head over to Visual Studio Code. So go ahead and make use of a source code editor, and you can go ahead and say File, Open Folder, and we want to open that dev folder that we just created here. So select that folder, and there we go. So we can see here we have, of course, our project Elevate and our virtual environment in place. All right. Now you can carry on using the CMD, the choice is yours, okay? Or you can just make use of Visual Studio Code. All right, that's the other option for you. So to make it easier, I'm just going to close this command prompt for now. And we can just click here on toggle panel right here, and we want to just change that, and it should automatically set everything up accordingly. If not, we can just simply go into our virtual environment. So I'm just going to say here venv /scripts /activate, because it opens up in dev. So in dev is the virtual environment. There we go. And we can now say cd elevate. So we can now go into our project and run manage.py. So let's cdn clear, and we can say python manage.py run server. All right, there we go. So we can see that set. These are just the unapplied migrations. There we go. So if we were to head over to the default localhost, there we go. Django has been installed and set up correctly as it should. All right. So there's our Django project up and running. Right. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to just create and configure a basic app, and then we'll go ahead and set up our basic URLs and views as well. So what you can do is head over to a Visual Studio Code. I just want to move this console a bit. And let's stop our console, so you can press Control-C. And what I want you guys to do is go ahead and create your first app. So you can just say here Django @admin start app, and I'm going to call mine links. There we go. So our app was created. Now what we need to do is, we can just type CLS is clear. We need to connect that to our settings.py file. So you can head over to your projects, your Django project settings.py file. I just want to remove this comment, it's so annoying. And we can scroll down, and what we can do is under installed apps, we can just go ahead and put in our app. So our app is links. Oh, links. And be sure to add a comma after that. All right, just to ensure everything's working fine, let's go ahead and run our server. So python manage.py run server. Okay, just to ensure everything's working fine. Okay, that's good. Right. So now that we've set up our app and configured it correctly, we can move on to setting our URLs and views accordingly. So what you want to do is you can close settings.py and head over to your app here, and you want to create a urls.py file in your app. So I'm going to right click on it and say new file and call it urls.py. Perfect. Add some space here. And we now need to connect this urls.py file to our main urls.py file in our Django project here under Elevate. So I'm going to put that to the side here. Okay, so this is from our main urls.py file, so you'll know that's from the main urls.py file if it says admin. And of course, this is the empty one that we want to configure. Now, before you can configure it, you need to at least have this URL patterns here in your urls.py file for your app. So here, you need to have it set. So I'm just going to borrow this from URL patterns here and just add in that closing square bracket. All right, that's all you need to add there. Now we can head over to our main project and configure our URL patterns here in our app with our main project here. So we can just go ahead and make use of the include function to help us do this. And we can say pass, add in an empty string, for example, and you want to say include. And in quotes, we want to include all of our URLs from links, urls.py. So we can put in links.urls. And remember to add in your comma at the end. Now you may need to just restart your server just to make sure it's working and configured. Perfect, there we go. So make sure you've got that all set and ready to go. Right, so let's carry on with the configuration. So the next thing that you want to do is head over to your urls.py file, and we want to eventually create URLs, and to do that we need to make use of the path function. Now we can go ahead and borrow this from our main urls.py file and just borrow this here. We'll casually borrow that. So from Django.urls import pass, add it right at the top, like so. Great, so we can now close this file here, this main urls.py from our project. We don't need it. And now let's just test a basic view. So we can go to our views here in our app. So that's automatically there, and open that to the side. And we want to create a basic view. So I'm going to say here, def home, pass in the request object, and we can simply go ahead and return something. So for now, we're just going to say pass. Okay. We can head over to urls.py, and we want to link it up. So we're going to create our own URL using the pass function. And here in as our route, we can leave it empty. And the views here, we want to say views.home. Okay, and to make use of views here, we need to actually import it. So we can say from .import views. Okay, so now we are connected to this view here that we set. And we can simply just set a name attribute here as well. And I like to also go ahead and leave that empty. And remember a quote at the end. All right, perfect. So there's our views and URLs in place. Now what we can do is now set up a basic template. Now you can either do it at the app level or at the project level. So at the project level, you usually head over to settings.py and set it up right here by templates here, but I don't prefer this way. I prefer app level templates. I feel that's a bit better. So you can decide which way you want to do it. So what I'm going to do here in links itself, I'm going to right click on it and go ahead and say new folder, and I'm just going to simply say templates. Okay, so here's my templates, and what I like to do to be safe is I like to refer to my templates under a extra directory here. So I'm going to refer to it as an app. So under templates, I'm going to right click and say new folder and call it links. So this helps to prevent any sort of namespace errors. So I'm just going to say links. All right. And within that, I'm going to right click and say new file and call it index.html. Okay. And here I'm just going to say, let's say homepage. Okay, that's perfect. So what we can do now is just ensure that that's set, and we can now configure that in our URLs. Great, so the views.home, that is perfectly fine. The index.html, perfect. Now in the views, we can set that up. So you can just say now return, render, and here you can just go ahead and return it accordingly. So what you want to do is you just want to go ahead and ensure that you're passing this index.html page here, you're passing it throughout your view. So that's something that you need to go ahead and set up. Right, so we can pass in our request. And here we just want to simply go ahead and refer to our template. So we need to put links / index.html. Okay, and that's all that you need to go ahead and pass in. So automatically now we should be redirected to a page that just shows homepage or whatever you set there. Okay, so we can now go ahead and refresh our page. And there we go, homepage. All right, so we've configured our basic URL, our structure, our directory. Now in terms into how I set up the templates, you can decide if you want an app level or if you want to go ahead and set it up in a project-based level. The choice is yours. Okay, so just set up your URLs, your views, a basic template. So this is just basic Django here. So make sure you set everything up accordingly. So that's very important. So we've got a basic project just up and running here. All right, so make sure you go ahead and set that up accordingly. Right. So the next step involves us going ahead and installing the Django-AllAuth package from PyPI. So what we can do is head over to the website and install Django-AllAuth. And as you can see here, it's an integrated set of Django applications that are addressing authentication, registration, and account management in terms of a third-party social account authentication. All right. So let's go ahead and install this package. So what you can do is go ahead and copy that, head over to your virtual environment. So what you can do is just stop your server if it's running, go ahead and paste that package command in and install it. Make sure you're in your virtual environment as well. Okay, so let's just wait for that to set up. Now don't worry, like I said, I will include all the links in the description below of everything that I make use of, okay? So there's quite a lot of packages to install here for AllAuth. It does come pre-packaged with a lot of other sub-packages per se, just like Django. So let's just wait for it to install. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video, and once it's been installed, we can move on. Right, so we can see the AllAuth package was installed amongst a lot of other packages that were pre-configured with it. Great, so let's just clear this up. Now I'm constantly going to refer to the docs here for Django-AllAuth, so I'll also attach this in the description below so you can read a little bit more about it as we progress. Now, since we installed the package, the next thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and add in the Django.contrib sites app to installed app. So this is very important, as we can see here. So we need to go ahead and ensure we add this, or else the AllAuth won't work. So you can go ahead and just copy that. So I don't like to copy the quotes. I like to put that in manually, because sometimes quotes are a little bit different in terms of the way it is in Django. So I just like to go ahead and copy in between first. Then head over to settings.py, and then we can put in the quotes and then paste it in. Okay, I just prefer it that way because sometimes quotes can cause an issue depending on their style and font, etc. All right. Okay, next we need to go ahead and add the AllAuth app itself in our settings.py file. So here you can just go ahead and add in AllAuth. Right. We then need to ensure that we add in the following. So there are additional sub packages or sub apps we need to install. So we need to go ahead and say allauth.account. Okay, and allauth.account will allow us to still make use of the default Django authentication mechanism, whereas allauth.social account, which we're about to install now, which is allauth.social account. Okay, this will allow us to authenticate ourselves via a social account, as the name implies. Like I said, this can be via GitHub, Facebook, Twitter, so it's based on the social providers. So if you head on back to this page here, we can see the supported providers for the social app, so we are going to use GitHub. All right, so that's what we need to set up there accordingly. All right. Right, so for now we want to authenticate ourselves with GitHub. So here in installed apps, we can carry on, and we can just say allauth, okay, .social account, okay, .providers, .github, and be sure to add in a quote at the end there. Okay, so of course you can read more in the documentation if you want to make use of Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Usually what you'll do is you'll just replace it where I have GitHub right now. So remember, it needs to be specific. So allauth.social account.providers.github. All right. Right, so after that, we need to enable this Django.contrib sites property here, or app. Okay, we need to configure the property. And to do that, at the top here, we can simply go ahead and say site_id equals 1. So that will configure it and set it up accordingly as it should be set. All right, so make sure you've got that in place. Right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to cater for AllAuth. So we're going to have to modify our authentication backend and explicitly state that we want to be able to authenticate ourselves in two ways, and that is by the default mechanism in Django, so the default login in Django, and also via a social account, regardless of what that is, whether it's GitHub, Twitter, Facebook. So we need to set up and modify our authentication backend accordingly. All right, so to do that, you can head over to the docs, and you can see here, if you scroll down, we have authentication backends right here. So what you can do is you can copy all of this here, just omit these quotes here. So we can just copy that all first of all, and we're going to add it on top of installed apps. So let's put it just here. And you just want to remove these dots here. Oh, sorry, they dots, it looks like quotes. And set up your authentication backend. So as we can see here, the first part here is to allow us to log in normally with Django, with the normal Django authentication method. And the second part is to allow us to go ahead and log in, like I said, via Twitter, Facebook, GitHub, etc. via AllAuth. So make sure you've added this in, copied it in from the documentation. So you're going to have to constantly refer back and forth just to get a good idea of how to move along. All right, so let's move on. Next, we need to specify the context processor that comes along with Django-AllAuth. Okay, but this depends on your Django version. So we can head down to, let's take a look. We can head over to our, our templates. Now you need to make sure that you have the following template here. Now if you're using a newer version of Django, you won't have a problem, but if you are using an older version of Django, you may not have this. So ensure that you have the following context processor in place. So Django.template.contextprocessors.request. So make sure you have this in place, very important. Okay, so just double check that you have that set. Right, so what we want to do now is just want to minimize this a bit. Next, we need to go ahead and configure our social account settings according to the provider that we selected. In our case, we chose GitHub. All right, so what you can do is you can go ahead and just add a space here. Perfect, and you can head over to the docs and you can scroll down. After you can see all the providers we can use, and we're using GitHub. And you want to look for this social account providers option right here. So you want to look for this here. So what you can do is you can go ahead and you can just go ahead and copy and paste the following. So I'm going to copy all of this here. Okay. And we can paste that in. All right. Now we may need to replace a few things here, and I'm just going to remove this comment here so we don't get confused. Okay. And what you want to do here is, instead of Google, you want to replace it with GitHub, since our social account provider that we stated here in installed apps is GitHub. So we just need to go ahead and switch that around. So we can just go ahead and replace it by saying GitHub, like so. And of course, regarding the app content here that we have, we will return to this, so not to worry. Just for the meantime, you want to go ahead and paste in this code here and just replace the top part here. Instead of saying Google, we want to say GitHub, because our social provider, our social account provider, will be based on GitHub. Now, essentially here, we are essentially creating a social account app, okay? And we need to paste in the client ID and secret ID from GitHub, okay, in order to provide this OAuth. So we are essentially here in app, we are allowing Django, our Django application, to communicate with GitHub. This is what we're doing here. So we're essentially setting up an application like you'll typically see in GitHub. We're setting our own application as our Django application itself. All right, so that's what's going on here. And we are just setting up our ID. So for those of you that have followed along with my AWS series, okay, this is very similar to like you could say an access key ID and a secret access key ID to have access between Django and AWS sort of thing. But in this case, Django and GitHub as a social account provider. So that's the best way I can explain this to you. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay, but don't worry, it'll make sense as we move along practically. All right, so next thing you want to do is head over to our main project, URLs.py. Right, and here, just double check you have the include function. You want to go ahead and add in the urls.py file for AllAuth. So you can head over to the documentation. Here you'll see we need this URL patterns here. Okay, so you can go ahead and copy the following, and paste that in, and there we go. So we'll now have access to a whole bunch of URLs that are now pre-configured for us. All right, great. So we've got most of everything set up. So make sure you add in that URLs now. Now what we need to do is actually make our migrations. So we need to migrate all of our database files from AllAuth to our Django application. So we can say Python manage.py migrate. So go ahead and type that command. Okay, there we go. That was quite fast. Just clear. And we just want to create a super user so we can see these models in Django admin. So we can say Python manage.py create super user. Okay, I'm just going to say admin and add a password. Perfect. Once your super user has been created, go ahead and run your server. Okay, just give it a moment. Perfect. Now you can just refresh your page, make sure there are no errors. Great. And go ahead and log in with your admin user. So with your admin credentials, go ahead and log in, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at our AllAuth app along with the models that went ahead and pre-configured for us when we did our when we went ahead and migrated our database files. All right. Right. So what you want to do is go ahead and log in with your admin credentials now. So go ahead and do that. And we can take a look here at social accounts here. So we have social accounts, and then we also have all of our models down here accordingly, such as social accounts, social application tokens, social applications, etc. So essentially, once we set up our credentials for our social account provider, and I'm referring to these here, the credentials for this social account provider here, we are going to see that if we click on social accounts here, we will see we'll have a user here that's been configured separately for the social account phase and not specifically under a Django user. All right. So just have a look, familiarize yourself, and just take a look at the application there. So when we create this user, that will be present in the social account section and the users section here under Django Authentication. All right. Although this user is special because this user will be connected via GitHub, so just keep that in mind. All right. So what you can do now is you can head over to GitHub. Okay, so make sure you have a GitHub account, make sure you've created one and that you're set and ready to go. So go ahead and log into your GitHub account. So as you can see, I'm currently logged into my GitHub account. And what I want to do now is I want to set up my credentials for my social account provider in settings.py that I mentioned here. So I want to be able to create an application that binds my Django app, okay, which is the application, to GitHub and obtain the client ID and the secret ID key. In terms of this key here, so this, I know these are key value pairs, but this key, if you get what I mean. All right, we're not going to have one here for GitHub, okay? You may have for certain other social accounts such as Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, but for GitHub we don't need this. But it's just best to just keep this in place here. It's not going to break or anything, but we need the client ID and the secret ID. So to do that, we would typically head over to the following URL, and that would be github.com/settings/applications/new, and press enter. Now here we'll be able to register a new OAuth application, and as you can see here in Django-AllAuth we have GitHub which supports OAuth 2 here. So we can go ahead and set up a few things here. So first we want to put an application name, and I'm going to put Elevate Django app. Okay, that's the name of my Django application. Now the homepage URL, okay, since we are doing this locally, okay, obviously when you go ahead and deploy it, you're going to use your official URL, which will be, for example, https://www.something.com. Now for us, it's locally, so what we can do is we can just sign out of our admin page, and we can go back to our home page, and we can just go ahead and we can copy the following URL here. Go ahead and paste that in your home page. That's the home page URL. You can add a description here if you want. This is optional, so you don't need to worry about that. And then we need to go ahead and set in an authorization callback URL. Okay, so regarding this authorization callback URL, this is automatically defined in our AllAuth package. Okay, so feel free to read in the docs if you want deeper knowledge into this here. So essentially, after looking into the docs to be a bit more specific, you're going to have to use the same homepage URL, but you're going to have to add a few things to it. So to make it accurate, it needs to be accounts/github, okay, /login/callback. All right, so make sure you've got this precise, is very important. So you can just use the homepage URL, and then you want to put /accounts/github/login and /callback to enable your authorization callback URL. So make sure you've got everything in place. So I'll go through it again. So we're registering an OAuth application in order to allow our users to sign in or log into our Django application with OAuth. So you need to set an application name. This can be anything. You need to set your homepage URL. So by default, we're using our normal default Django application URL locally, and the authorization callback URL needs to be very specific. So what I can also do is I can also add this in the comment section and pin it to make it a bit clearer for you guys so you don't forget. Right, so make sure you've got this in place, and once you're happy with all of that, you can go ahead and register your application. Perfect. So you should see that your application was successfully created, and we want to now go ahead and add this to our Django application under social account providers. So let's start with the client ID. So we can scroll down and we can see our client ID here. So you can go ahead and copy your client ID. Of course, don't share this with anyone, your own ID, but I think that goes without saying. So paste that in here and go ahead and generate a new client secret. Go ahead and say generate. You may need to enter in a password, but this is fine, so go ahead and do that. Right, and then it's going to show you your client secret ID, and you can copy that. Go ahead and replace the current number and just add in your secret there. Now we don't need the key here, and our app here, the application, is essentially referring to Elevate, a Django app now. So that's what that's referring to essentially. So go ahead and enter in your client ID and your client secret or your secret key, etc. So make sure you've got that in place. All right, so that's very important. Perfect. So make sure you've got that in place and that you're all set and ready to go. All right. So we've got that in place now, and we can now head over to our application. And what we want to do is just refresh our page and make sure it's still working fine. Okay, that's working perfectly okay. So that's great. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to evaluate all of the URLs that have been added to our Django application from the AllAuth package. Now remember, in our urls.py file, we included this URL. So obviously, AllAuth has a bunch of URLs that we don't know about that have been pre-configured for us. I'm assuming a login page, a default login page, a default sign out page or logout page. So just go ahead and look at that. So we can access this URL by saying accounts. So let's go ahead and just type that in. So that suffix accounts, like that. So that's exactly what it shows in the urls.py file. So let's press enter. And this is perfectly fine, not found, but here we can see all the URLs that it's configured for us. So we have one that says sign up, accounts login, accounts logout, password change, accounts email. So these are all the URLs that come pre-configured with AllAuth. All right, so what we want to do is, after we've gone ahead and set this up, okay, we want to go ahead and just have a look here at all these URLs. So we are probably going to use accounts logout, which is referred to as a name attribute account logout, and accounts/login is referred to account_login. All right. So we can go ahead and just test this out, see if it's working, and it seems fine. So accounts login. So that's something that we can actually go ahead and test out, so we can just see how that works. So we can now go ahead and say, okay, accounts/login. /. All right, so we get to this page here. Okay, so it doesn't look so pretty. It says, please sign in with one of your existing third-party accounts or sign up for example.com account and sign in below. So we can see here that we can either go ahead and sign in with a username, a password here, okay, with the default Django application, or what we can do is sign in with GitHub. So let's actually go ahead and try this with GitHub here. So we can go ahead and say, all right, GitHub. So it says sign in via GitHub. You're about to sign in using a third-party account from GitHub. All right. And I want to say continue. Okay, great. So now it says here, authorize Elevate Django app. Okay. So we want to authorize this, and we're going to redirect back to our homepage, and we want to say authorize Codemaster. That's my username there. And here it says page not found. Now that's perfectly fine, because this means that it's working correctly. So you can see here it's going to accounts profile. Now all that we have to do is we need to just set the login redirect URL to go to wherever we want it to redirect. So this is perfectly fine and as expected. So to fix this, we would need to head over to settings.py, and we can just add this anywhere we'd like. I'm just going to add it just here above installed apps. You want to add in login_redirect_URL, and you can set the location of where you want to redirect to once you've actually logged in. Now we can of course set this URL to anything that we want. So I'm just leaving it at the home page for now, but we can go ahead and modify this soon enough. All right. So go ahead and just add in this variable here for the moment. Okay, so just make sure you set that in for now. Right, so as we are aware, we do have a login page and a logout page, but we want to get to the login page by a link, and we also want to see a unique page when we log in. So this may be a dashboard page, for example. So to do this, what we can do is head over to links, templates, and we can create a new file called dashboard.html. So just a page here called dashboard.html, and what I'm going to do is, like index.html, I'm just going to copy that h1, and I'm just going to say here dashboard. Okay, so something very simple, very easy. And now, as you're aware, we have not logged out just yet. So let's modify our dashboard.html page here accordingly in order to log out. So what we can do here is we can just say if request .user.is_authenticated. Okay, we can go ahead and we can just add a space, and here I just want to add a tag here that says ahref equals, and in quotes here I just want to add my curly brace and I'll say URL, and we'll talk about the URL now, and I'm just creating a basic tag here that says logout of account. Okay, and here I just want to say end if. Okay, that's perfectly fine. So go ahead and just create a basic dashboard page and add in the following. So we're going to check if we are actually logged in, if we are a user that's logged in and authenticated. I want to show them on this dashboard page that they have option here to log out. Right, so before we go ahead and discuss the URL, we need to just assign this to our URL and views. So we can just close up settings.py for now and index.html. So let's just set this up. So we just want to configure dashboard.html. So we can configure it to our URL. So I'm going to say pass, and I'm going to call this dashboard. No, this is the main one. Excuse me. So this is our main URL. We don't want that. What we want is our links urls.py and our links views. Okay, so here under URLs, we can go ahead and say pass, and this is going to be dashboard, and I'm going to say give it the name views.dashboard, name equals dashboard. Go ahead and add that in. Now we need to create this view, of course, so we can head over to view, and we can say here def, I believe we called it dashboard, pass in your request, return render request, and here we defined it under links dashboard, so links /dashboard.html. There we go. So you may need to head over to your URLs here, and you may just need to retype it, and just so Visual Studio Code recognizes it, and there we have it in place. So we now have this dashboard.html page. So when we go ahead and access it, okay, we need to ensure that we have a link here that allows us to log out of the account. Now remember earlier I showed you the whole bunch of links that AllAuth provides us with. We can go ahead and look for what that account logout name parameter is. So what we can do here is we can actually stay on this page, and we want to look for logout. So the name that is referenced by is account logout. So if you see this here, we can copy that account logout, and we can paste it here in between, because this is what we want to do. We want to perform this action to actually log out a user. So make sure you go ahead and add that in. So that will be the URL that is predefined via this AllAuth package accordingly. So you have it in place. So make sure you have that. Now manually we can head over to this dashboard.html page. So we see it's based on dashboard here. So you can just go ahead and just add in dashboard. And we can now see we have an opportunity here to log out of an account. So we can literally go ahead and log out if we wish, okay? So that's how you can go ahead and set that up accordingly. All right, so if we were to go ahead and log out, it will take us to the necessary page that is set. Right, so let's log out. All right, and it says here, are you sure you want to sign out? Successfully signed in, so we want to sign out, and we can say sign out. And there we go, it takes us to the home page itself. All right, perfect. Now, what we want to do now is we want to have an opportunity here to actually reach this page here. So we want to go to, we just want to say accounts and, excuse me, /. Okay, we want to head over to this accounts login page as you see here. Okay, this is the page we actually want to access, okay. So it's going to be unique because we want to head on to this accounts login page that's going to allow us to log in with GitHub itself. So what you can do is head over to your home page, okay, and we want to edit our index.html that we defined earlier on. So you can head over to index.html, and now what we want to do is we want to load in the social account tags here at the top. So you can just say load social account. like that. And you can just go ahead and copy literally that link tag here. And all you want to do is switch it up. So here you want to say login via GitHub. So all you need to do is change this URL here, and you can just go ahead and in these quotes, you can say GitHub. And we're not going to say URL in this case. We're going to say provider underscore login URL, and this will allow us to log in via GitHub itself. All right. So make sure you add in this setting accordingly. All right. So this will allow us to log in via GitHub, and we want to ensure then in our settings.py that this login redirect URL, so when we are logged in, essentially, we want to ensure that it is set correctly as it should be. So let's do the final test. So when we log in, we want to be redirected to the dashboard. This would be more appropriate. So here we can put in dashboard. So remember that needs to be set to whatever you set your route name to and your name attribute. So make sure you set that up accordingly. So this is where we will be redirected to. So let's start the process. So refresh your page here, and you should see in your home page it say login via GitHub, because remember we went ahead and in index.html just provided a route to login via GitHub accordingly. So you can just say login via GitHub, and here it says sign in via GitHub. So you're about to sign in using a third-party account from GitHub. So you can go ahead and just simply say continue. And there you go. So you can now see we've been redirected according to the login redirect URL to the dashboard that's here. And we can go ahead and log out, and that's going to take us to a message that says sign out. Are you sure you want to sign out? And we can just say sign out, and it's going to take us back to the home page itself. So we have a basic flow there in terms of signing in with GitHub. Okay. Now this is all done according to the API credentials that we set. So if we scroll down here, this is all set to the social account providers here. This is the reason for it working and going to that point. Now, to give you some more clarity, okay, you can head over to your admin page here and just log in with an admin user. So go ahead and enter in your admin credentials. Right, so let's log in. And if you head over to social accounts down here, you'll be able to see that you have one linked user and the provider. So our user here is the Codemaster96. So it will take the name of your GitHub username itself. It's going to take that. And this user, of course, is going to be able to log into your Django account successfully. All right, even though it's part of the social account user. All right, guys, so that's it. So that's how you can go ahead and set up your account for social authentication. So I just showed you an example with GitHub. You of course can manipulate it based on the documentation to go ahead and make use of it via Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, etc. So it's really quite endless what you can actually do in terms of the possibilities, etc. All right, so that's how it works, guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So as always, thank you for the support. And yeah, until next time, see you.